Hey guys, welcome back to Very Literary Carrie. And before we get too deep in the conspiracies today and I scare you off, go ahead and click the subscribe button because we are going to talk about The Day After Roswell, which is by Colonel Philip J. Corso, retired, with William J. Birnes. And this book was extremely controversial when it was written in 1997, and it remains so today. It's so controversial, some people don't even know whether to classify it as fiction or nonfiction. Some people consider it a landmark expose, other people consider it a literary hoax. So maybe you will listen to this book review and you'll pick it up and decide for yourself. But if you are unfamiliar with the Roswell crash of 1947, I'll tell you a little bit about it to start with. So the Roswell crash is controversial. We don't even know a specific date for it. June/July 1947, there is a crash. Debris is recovered by the Roswell airfield. And the newspaper in Roswell, the Daily Record front page, reports a press release that was released by the Army base there. And it says, RAAF captures flying saucer on ranch in Roswell region. Okay, after this press release hits the front page of the paper, then we see other Army personnel come in and they change the story. And the story changes to, it's not a flying saucer, it's a weather balloon. Well, some of the eyewitnesses know that the weather balloon story is false. And so this is when the alien conspiracies and a lot of the controversy begins. And some people actually claim to have seen alien bodies that were recovered. Some of the ranchers claim to have found pieces of a downed craft. They claimed that some of the pieces had hieroglyphic looking writing on it. So there were all sorts of stories that came out of Roswell. But in 1994, the government did finally admit that the weather balloon story was indeed bogus. Okay, so we did finally get that admission. And they claimed that it wasn't a weather balloon. It was actually a spy balloon that was part of a covert operation called Operation Mogul. And this covert operation was part of a mission to spy on the Soviet Union. And in 1997, they had to go a step further and admit that, yes, some of the eyewitnesses may have seen bodies, and that these bodies weren't people. These bodies were parachute test dummies, which sounds a bit unbelievable to me because I don't know why a spy balloon that's unmanned would need to have parachute test dummies in it. I don't know. And I don't know how an eyewitness could mistake a test dummy for a dead body of any kind. I don't know. That just doesn't jive with me. So, but something to keep in mind about the whole Roswell incident is that Roswell is in the epicenter of kind of military operations, because near the Roswell Army airfield, you also have White Sands and Los Alamos, which are some of our missile testing sites. And you also have a lot of the former German scientists like Werner von Braun, who are now working for the U.S. government on some of our rocketry programs and missile programs. And so we have a lot of those people in that area working on military operations. So this is an epicenter of military defense operations. And so I'm not saying it's aliens. Could be military operations. Do the government, cover stories necessarily work? Not really. But Not saying it's aliens, even though my sticker choice would say otherwise, I know. So, this book. I'm going to be quite honest. This book shocked me right out of the gate because within the first 25 pages, Colonel Corso is talking about alien bodies being carted away from the Roswell crash site on stretchers. And I really wasn't expecting that because this is a colonel we're talking about. And so he is just below a brigadier general. And I was expecting a little bit more of a military memoir. I was honestly expecting him to go into a little bit more of his military service in Korea, maybe talk a little bit more about his intelligence background there under MacArthur, maybe kind of ease into his time with the National Security Council under Eisenhower, maybe drop in a few revelations here and there. And that's really not what this was. Within the first 25 pages, shock and awe. And he does make it clear that he was not at the Roswell crash site. So he is basing that information on people who are claiming to be eyewitnesses. So you do have to keep that in mind. However, he does claim that when he was stationed at a military base in Kansas, that he did encounter in 1947 those same alien bodies as they were being transported from Roswell to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And again, that description kind of took me off guard. He talks about, in the book, without spoiling everything, he talks about his time in 1961 as the chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk. And essentially, he was in charge of a filing cabinet which was filled with artifacts from the Roswell crash site. And these artifacts were pieces of technology that he was then supposed to take to scientists, who would take to government contractors, who would then reverse engineer these pieces of technology to be used for defense purposes, and then also in the private sector. So a lot of our technology that we use today, things like fiber optics and Kevlar, Philip Corso makes the claim that these technologies came straight from Roswell. And I'm not saying it's aliens, but if you look at our technological advances over the last 100 years, it is quite unbelievable. And I just think about my grandmother and how she went from horse and buggy when she was a child to, before she passed away, she was using jet travel. I mean, she was on an airplane to visit, family. And I just can't wrap my head around that. And I don't know if I would trust an airplane if I had grown up on a horse and buggy. That just seems like a giant leap in technology. So I'm not saying it's aliens, but just something to think about. So he does talk about his time there, and he also talks about the Cold War, and he frames the Cold War in this kind of alien framework, because he makes the argument that the Cold War ended because of the alien threat. Essentially, that the Soviet Union and the United States both realized we had to work together in order to fight this extraterrestrial threat. And he also states that when you think about the amount of weapons that both of our countries were building up, we had way more weapons than we needed to annihilate each other. And it really wasn't to annihilate each other. It was actually to take care of this alien threat. And he also talks about the inner workings of our government, which, even if you're not interested in the alien aspect of this book And he actually uses a different term for aliens, which I found interesting. He calls them EBEs, extraterrestrial biological entities. But even if you're not interested in the alien part, he has a very insightful commentary about the inner workings of our government. And I highlighted a particular page because I thought it pretty much described the show Homeland, if anyone out there is a fan of that show and loves the character Carrie Mathison as much as I do. But it pretty much described her situation. And it says that information is power to be used. You don't simply give it away to your government's political leader, whether it's Republicans, the Tories, or communists, just because they tell you to. You can't trust the politicians, but you can trust other spies. And he goes on to say, your primary loyalty is to your own group, and the other group's playing the same game. The CIA, KGB, British Secret Service, and a whole host of other foreign intelligence agencies were loyal to themselves and to the profession first, and to their respective governments last. He goes on to say, professional spy organizations like the CIA and the KGB tend to exist only to preserve themselves. And then he says this as well. This I found quite interesting. If you look at how the great spy wars of the Cold War played out, you'll see how the KGB and CIA acted like one organization. Lots of professional courtesy, lots of shared information to make sure nobody got fired, and a few human sacrifices every now and then just to keep everybody honest. But when it came down to loyalty, the CIA was loyal to the KGB and vice versa. And he talks a lot about how our own government didn't trust itself. And, even just, with the Kennedy administration and talking about the mistrust there and how that caused so many problems just within, his presidency, it really gives you some understanding of that. So I found this book fascinating, and I would just say to you, don't write it off, because one of two things is true about this author. Either one, there's some truth to what this man is saying, or two, these are the delusional ramblings of an 80-year-old man, and we entrusted this man with highly classified, highly sensitive information, and he ran in some extremely powerful circles within our government, and his opinion was sought after. He rubbed elbows with powerful generals and presidents, and either one of those two options is kind of scary. So even if there's some truth to this, or even if he just made this fantastical story up and it's just some sort of delusion, both of those options are kind of scary. But I will say, I think that this man believed at least some of what he wrote, because what I've read about him, in his obituary, he actually had requested that in lieu of flowers, people give donations that were collected at the Roswell UFO Museum so that a plaque could be constructed in commemoration of the Roswell crash site. And I do know that his son believed that he was telling the truth. So whether it is the truth or not, I think that this man, at the end of his life, believed that he was telling the truth. Whether it is or not, that's still up for debate. However, I will leave you with this note. In the last 2 years, we have had several really interesting videos come out that the Navy has released. I don't know if you're aware, but the Tic Tac video and the Go Fast video. And these are UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. That's the new term for them. These are UAPs that our naval pilots have encountered, and they're not U.S. aircraft. They're not foreign aircraft. We don't know what they are. And they are engaging U.S. military aircraft. They are flying near our aircraft carriers. They are flying near our carrier groups, near our military bases. And we're having an increase of these sightings, particularly near our nuclear sites. And that's quite alarming. And our military is starting to relax some of its kind of stigma around reporting UFO phenomena. And so that is good to see. But it is kind of scary that we do have some unidentified things flying around our military sites with striking regularity. And so I will link a couple articles related to that in the description box. And I will try to link some videos for the Tic Tac video and the Go Fast video. If you guys haven't seen those yet, I'll link those in the description box below. But I would say that The Day After Roswell is worth a read, and you should check it out. And I hope my friends who were awaiting this video really liked it. Shout out to my friend Steve. Hope you like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.